Yay.
It's honestly kind of amazing that we have done this show for as long as we have with as little functional knowledge of how the show actually works. I don't know. My ignorance here is that I haven't like perfectly memorized the delays for like when the show starts and when the slate goes up and throwing to break and ending the show when the slate goes down and all of that. But I think we're on a hot streak of like 3 shows in a row where you guys have been talking as the Weird Game slate has been up before the show's actually begun. And Seth is on a borderline infinite run of not knowing when the break's happening. But I don't know, Seth. Are we ever going to get better at this?
No.
Let's start the show.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Whoa, I saw a comment that is absolutely incorrect. I hate to start by dunking on it, but I got nervous because I saw a comment here from Cody. It said, looks like Josh's off-season lesson was to give up off-season lessons. And I thought, whoa, Tucker, how dare you? But no, it's still on the rundown, and I think today's the day we get to it. Welcome into Only Weird Games here on KC Sports Network. We'll talk about Dane Brugler's 7-round mock draft on The Athletic and Nate Taylor's thoughts on that mock, the possibility of moving up in this draft or letting the wide receiver board fall to you. Seth's written about Xavier Legette. We'll get into that. And also Brett Veach is talking tomorrow, and I just want you guys to help us guess what he's gonna lie about then. With that being said, fellas, how you feeling, Nate? You got any big lies you're preparing for from Brett Veach? You think he's gonna say something about how they're happy with every position group simultaneously? Are they gonna cut or trade a tackle or cut or trade for a tackle? I don't know what to expect.
Look, we're always trying to fortify our roster, strengthen the competition in the rooms.
Oh.
Look, we anything is on the board. I'm not going to get into the medicals, but our board is sound. We spent a lot of time on it. As you so eloquently tweeted out earlier today, me and my staff have yet to watch draft day, but if that's
this should have been the intro.
If that's what Sean Payton and his staff want to do, that's their prerogative. We as the reigning world champions, we don't need to watch a Disney movie to be inspired and to get our analytics in order. Excuse me, what? Draft day wasn't a Disney movie? Sure seemed like it. Sure seemed like one.
Draft day is the type of movie where they would hand the ball off to DeMar Hamlin on a pump fake on 4th down. Got Nate taking a sip there. Sorry about that. Didn't realize it was coffee. That's on me.
Yes, Todd Barton. Expect a lot of cliches from now until Thursday night, maybe early Friday morning, depending on
We've prepared for every possibility. We've got 9 different scenarios that we're prepared to go down. We're confident that we're ready for anything.
Yep.
We might move up, we might move down. It all depends on what the board tells us. Any positions open. There will be some quarterback joke made.
Yep.
There will be some all even quarterback. You never know.
Yep.
Look,
Seth, you may want to know how many first-rounded graded prospects we have on our board. And look, we didn't equate the quarterbacks into that, but obviously we want a lot of quarterbacks to be selected in the first round. Please take J.J. McCarthy.
Please, I don't think you're going to have to ask for that. I think that happened so fast, guys. J.J. McCarthy was like, maybe if a team wants to hop in at 32, they get an extra year. He's going to Washington. And it's like, whoa.
Well, and in the meantime,
he's a commander.
Bo Penix has gone.
Sure. I mean, did you say Penix or penis? I mean, what are we doing here?
How do you pronounce his name? Is it Penix?
Hey, Seth. You pronounce his name Michael.
Michael Penix.
Michael
Penix. Bo Nix.
Yeah,
I haven't told him Bo Penis.
Can we get Bo Nix into the first round? Call him Bo Penix.
Dang it, guys. Look.
Hey, it's been a long time since we did one of these kind of ads, but if you've got a bow in your Penix,
Man, I don't pay attention to any of the quarterbacks. I barely know who Caleb Williams is.
Clearly.
I am legitimately embarrassed.
Sure.
Oh, dang it. Oh, the comments. So it's
Bo Nix is
who's the
37
Washington
years old,
quarterback?
guys, but
Penix?
he's going to come in the second round and light it up. Yeah.
Michael Penix.
Michael Penix. So it's Bo Nix.
Yes.
And he's for Oregon.
He's 44 years old. Got it. Yep.
Yes, he just completed his
7-year transfer. Yep.
He's
just
Van
completed his
Wilder,
second term
basically.
at Oregon. Yes.
That guy, yep, he's Tommy Boy and Van Wilder into one.
Yep.
All of this effort for a throwaway joke about not worrying about the fact that Penix was throwing to 3 future NFL wide receivers,
Right.
and still hoping teams will take him in the first round. All of this
Say the
for
same
that.
Thing. Say the same thing about Jaden Daniels. Say the same
That's
thing.
what I was going to
Say the
say.
same thing. Say the same thing.
Look, man, I spent some time watching Brian Thomas's film, and we'll see how Daniels does as a pro. That guy, he YOLOs so often when he's rushing. That guy took more hits that made me gasp out loud than any quarterback I can remember watching. It's like, oh, that's a defensive lineman. Well, I weigh 180 pounds. Ha ha! And he like jumps into them. And I'm sitting there, like I'm imagining his coach being like, dude, what are you doing? Please stop. But I really, all I wanted was to make a joke about Penix being drafted in the first round, and I want Nix in the first round, and now I've just humiliated myself. Will someone else please talk about something for a minute so people will forget about this and actually listen to what I have to say?
Remember, guys, remember, ladies and gentlemen, I know this has nothing to do with the Chiefs, but it is in favor of their dynastic run. Let's not forget that the 49ers traded a lot of picks for the right to select Trey Lance.
Yeah.
While also having a litany of experts in the draft analyst world say, clearly they're moving up for Mac Jones. That's true. Both of these quarterbacks were selected in the first round to the benefit of the Chiefs. So already, and obviously I love him, God bless him, he's very, very good at this. I don't know what Dane Brugler knows, but we can't do this, guys.
How many quarterbacks does he think are going in the first round?
We can't have it be J.J. McCarthy at number 4 to the Minnesota Vikings. We cannot do this. We can't.
Man, they've been through enough.
We can't do this.
He does fit, based on what I've heard, and I don't know why anyone would take anything I have to say seriously about the draft.
Shanahan system, yeah. Point and shoot.
Point and shoot. And it's weird. You'd think that Michael Penix would be better at that, but he's not. And I thought that was pretty good. Anyway, I'm trying to recover my dignity, and that's probably not the route to go.
It just took like half a second.
So,
I tell you what, Seth. Say what. Nobody in the comments is complaining about you getting that name wrong.
Nope.
The comments are having a great time about with what has happened here.
My imposter syndrome is just right now, just like, they're all gonna know. It's like, no, what? I don't know.
You admit your college football ignorance, and then you draft. Then you draft, or you go through and do the analysis pre-draft of the position groups you want to look at. You admit this on the front end,
right? And look, they may say,
you know how bad this has to
be.
Of course, I'm eating. I'm eating gummy bears. But look. Can we bring Jay Billis in to talk about Michael Penix's length, but said in Penix, to where Reese Davis has to be like, wingspan. That kind of length, right, Jay Billis? No, the other length, the girth length. No.
Yeah, no, we can't do the Girth Brooks thing again. So how many? I am curious though, because Dane has, he's got his finger on the pulse of the league. Do
you want me
He's got 5. I love it. I want so many quarterbacks. Stop it, Josh. I want so many quarterbacks drafted in the first round.
5.
I want so many quarterbacks drafted in the first round. I want like 7. I mean, come on. Don't we think people still believe in Spencer Rattler, right?
In the third round, yes.
Seth, we have a question here from T. Smith in the comments. Seth, I was wondering, do you still think Travis Kelce loves football? He is officially hosting Are You Smarter Than a Celebrity now. I don't know if that was
I'm sure
that was announced or rumored on Tuesday, but
Travis Kelce is the greatest tight end to ever play, and I'm sure he will do everything he needs to do to be ready, regardless of morons who have gone through the 35-year-old transition and say, "Ooh, that's tough."
Okay.
But,
yeah. I don't think Nate's a moron. Let's talk about what we saw from Dane Brugler's draft, and specifically what Nate saw, taking a closer look at it. We can go through a couple of these as we sort of arrive at them. We've talked about Adonai Mitchell a lot over the course of this draft season, and I am going to talk about him in one very specific pancreatic way momentarily, in a way I didn't know I was going to get to do this week. We'll get to that in a moment, but in the meantime, I have sort of found myself. Here's my new Adonai Mitchell comparison for you guys, okay?
Go for it.
I'm already giving up now, and I'm letting it go, and I'm letting my heart be free right now, so type 1 George Pickens doesn't break it. And I think that's what's going to happen to me with Adonai Mitchell. I think he's just type 1 diabetic George Pickens to me, which better if I just accept right now that he's going to go to a different team that knows how they want to use him, that's just going to handle that business, then I don't have to have my heart broken whenever the Chiefs either get sniped right before he goes or they let him go entirely so they can draft some 5'7" guy Seth hasn't done a film review for yet.
That's by the way, that is. I am half convinced that's going to happen. Was Adonai Mitchell who he took at 32 for the Chiefs?
Yes. Dane Brugler takes Mitchell at 32 for the Chiefs.
Now look, this is the perfect year, kind of to Josh's point. This is the perfect year for the perfect storm, where there is a litany of 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" wide receivers for the Chiefs to take somebody 5'10". This is the precise year to go, hey, you can get a 6'4" guy who can run, who can catch, who can, route you down. Nope. Give me McConkey. Give me McConkey.
Right.
So this is the perfect year to not take a 6'4", athletic freak when
Is it? Is that where you're close to being a perfect year for that?
Yeah, and I know this is getting ahead of ourselves, and this might be the first off-season lesson that I give out. But kids, considering that there are a lot of 6'3", 6'4" wide receivers, one of the many off-season lessons is, remember that T. Higgins guy? Might not want to make that mistake again by drafting a 8.5, 9 Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Just might want to learn from that lesson.
That's a great lesson. I think that's a great lesson, Nate.
Might want to learn from that lesson. Now, what was T. Higgins 6? Is T. Higgins 6'3" or 6'4"? I have to look this up.
I would have put him at 6'3", probably. I'm not sure. It always blows my mind that Jamar Chase is a flat 6 foot, right?
He's 6'4". Oh my goodness.
Higgins is 6'4"?
Yeah, wow. That's what Pro Football Reference has him as.
Chase is listed at 6 flat, and that's just the craziest thing in the world to me because he plays like he's 7 flat. It's crazy.
He does. And he's a great example of when people talk about like big-bodied ball-winning receivers, they need to be built a certain way. You really don't. Steve Smith Sr., he won a bunch of contested catches down the field because he's kind of a psycho, honestly.
Yeah, it was Steve Smith,
yeah, in a good way.
Yeah.
But really, once you're 6 foot, you're going to be the same height or taller than most of the corners you face, unless you're playing the Chiefs and they their guys march out there looking like Slender Man or whatever because they're all 6'4",
carrying Trent McDuffie under one of their arms. It's actually no. Trent McDuffie's the one that's strapped to the Hannibal Lecter thing. It's wait a second, the little guy's the one that you guys.
It's Ace Ventura too.
Hulk. Why is he strapped down? Oh no, he's the one you need to be afraid of. Actually, 6'3" guy's really good at football, but the Hannibal Lecter, that's Trent McDuffie.
If Adonai Mitchell fell to 32, he was the very first guy I looked at in the Know Your Draft Chris series. It's actually the unlocked one if people want to take a look. Here's the thing with Mitchell, the production scares people, but anytime you see a lack of production, you got to look at why. And one of the big things that people say is, well, he gives up on a lot of routes. And that's true. Adonai Mitchell spent a lot of time upset on the field. The thing is, that's because he was open and his quarterback either didn't throw him the ball or I guess attempted to throw him the ball. At least I'm guessing he was trying to throw him the ball. But it went watching college quarterbacks, guys.
Yeah, man.
Like
Yeah,
when I've been
It's
I can't do it.
bad.
I've been charting Mahomes for years, and so even charting other pros can be tough unless they're an elite QB. But like college guys, I'm just like the number of times I'm like, there it is. And I'll like say it out loud to myself. It's like, there it is. There it is. Nope. Okay. No, we're just not going to throw it to him. Like I'm doing it. And so I can imagine Mitchell has the same voice as said, oh no, it's fine. I've completely cooked this guy in a double move. I'm by myself down here. Like, what's the name of the guy who does those breakdowns, the pretend coaches meetings?
Mr. Go 30?
Yeah, Mr. Go 30. It's like, oh, yeah, see Adonai Mitchell out there, but the moment's too big. No, you can't throw that far, so you piss down your leg. And you don't like just that whole bit is never not funny to me. With Mitchell, he's a terrific route runner. And in a big-bodied receiver, that's pretty rare. He's got good explosion. His athleticism doesn't pop out on tape the way you would think it would, given how he tested at the combine. But it's good. Like you can see him exploding in and out of his breaks a little bit, and that's something that, like with Ladd McConkey, that first step is a big difference between the two of them. I think they're both good route runners. I think McConkey's a better route runner, but I think Mitchell can. In a way, he can separate better despite not being as good a route runner because that first step he takes, he explodes out of it, whereas McConkey steps out of it. It's kind of like the difference between like, you know what? No, I can't do any more Ladd McConkey jokes.
I'm calling for the ISO here because unless one of you guys want to talk about diabetes first, it's my turn to go.
Go for it.
This was fascinating. I didn't know this. I hadn't seen this anywhere throughout this pre-draft process. But Bob McGinn.
It's in the medical file. It's medicals, kids.
I don't think it was in the Beast either. I went to go scan through that and I didn't see it in there either. And so that's how you know they're keeping that thing under wraps. But so Adonai Mitchell, type 1 diabetic. For the new viewers and listeners of this show, same. I was diagnosed a few years ago, so much later than most. I would be so fascinated to know when Adonai Mitchell was diagnosed, if it was as a child, which is very, very common for type 1 diabetes, or if it was later in life. But some of the quotes here by Bob McGinn in Go Long, which is Tyler Dunn's newsletter. Great work there. We've talked about Tyler many times, and I have volunteered to Tyler to be his new diabetes correspondent when necessary. But a couple of the things in this scouting report that talked about Adonai Mitchell in relation to the diabetes thing is really, really relevant to how you look at Adonai Mitchell. So one of these scouts here says, before you even, go ahead and let's cut this for my own bio. Before you even get to the diabetic part, he's kind of going to do it his way. He's a little bit of a wild horse. I'm going to take that and use that for myself.
Yes.
Even before the diabetes part. Then once you do that, he doesn't address the diabetic stuff in a mature way. He's very much a boom or bust type guy. You're going to have to assign somebody to be next to him for his first few years, and because his issues are all about his diabetes and his blood sugar, said a second scout. Hey, Noah Gray, clear your schedule. When his blood sugar's off, he's rude, he's abrasive, he doesn't pay attention in meetings. It's why you get really, really shitty character reports coming out of Georgia and Texas. But when his stuff is normal and they get him normal by lunchtime, he's out at practice, high energy, best practice player, loves football.
Gotta be honest, that sounds like
there is no way that's actually in there.
Come on,
That's
man.
all verbatim.
That sounds like a first grade teacher. Once you get him to lunchtime.
Get him right by lunchtime. Seth, I can't believe you didn't see this, and I'm thrilled.
Once we get him to lunch and recess, he's normal.
Then he's great.
And Josh, I have takes on this, but you obviously are the expert here.
Yeah.
Is that abnormal for someone with diabetes, Josh?
Certainly not. The effort and the surrounding circumstances are variables in all of this. So like there's another one here, and I think this quote here is totally fair. A third scout said diabetes was a major concern. Quote, you've got to look out for it and he's got to take care of himself. Every diabetic does. There's some questions about at the end of the day, there's some questions, but at the end of the day, he's a good player that hasn't done anything overly malicious. He's probably just immature. Now, I have diabetes, again, diagnosed at 27. I don't know what it's like to be a parent of a child with diabetes, which is probably the next most qualified person who could add to this conversation, because you want to talk about immature. there are infants. Yeah. I mean, you have toddlers was the word I was looking for. You have toddlers that you may see an Omnipod on their arm, and you go, wait a second, like that takes a lot of work, not to make light of it, but to make light of it. It takes a lot of work to keep that child alive. Like that's a real thing that I cannot imagine from a parent's perspective. The fascinating thing about it is I do wonder, what has he actually done for his own diabetes management? Because if he was diagnosed more recently, he's in incredible shape, he's an incredible athlete, and he's a college student. I could see him not having super disciplined processes for managing all of that. And you have to be pretty disciplined to manage your diabetes without it becoming a thing that flares up all the time. And so, just really in the weeds, if his blood sugar is riding high all the time, I don't have super weird, aggressive or short highs. But I know my mom also type 1. I know how those ups and downs affect her. I will tell you that you cannot only not play football, you can't go up and down stairs when your blood sugar is low. Like you lose your knees somewhere in there. And so all of that is very serious, very much about his management of it. And I'm just so interested. I would love to ask him, with truth serum and insulin and behind closed doors, did Texas make that easier or harder on you? Yeah. Because that's the thing that NFL teams now have a chance to turn this into a positive, is to say, hey guys, and the Chiefs would be a weird one to do it, given some report card grades. But if they say, hey, we're investing in you for the long haul here. Here is all of this technology that maybe you're using and maybe you're not. Here's all the ways we can monitor this. Here's how our training staff and nutrition staff and everyone surrounding can help make your life easier throughout this process. Mark Andrews, type 1 diabetic. Noah Gray, type 1 diabetic. Adonai Mitchell, now we know, is type 1 diabetic. That is a system that if there's anything in place for Noah Gray, or if it's as much as, hey, Noah, go do us a favor here and try to work with this guy on this part of his life that will continue long after football, that he's going to need to get better at managing, if that is where it's coming from. I just thought it was fascinating, because as long as he's right by lunchtime is a very, very low level of understanding how diabetes works and why those things come together. And I read that and thought, well, wait a second. If he's George Pickens when his blood sugar is off, it's your job to get his blood sugar right and make sure that's easier for him, put him in good positions, and then you've got a model citizen who's great at practice as long as he gets to lunch on time.
Hey, Josh, the longest tenured coach in the NFL, when he has practice?
Before lunch?
During the lunch hour.
During lunch.
Literally during the lunch hour. I get the privilege, the access, the credentials to watch grown men eat before they practice. Yes.
Good.
And hopefully ask a couple questions. Now, I do know Noah Gray, for instance, as an example, does do some things that is slightly different than like the average guy in the locker room before practice.
Yep.
Sure.
To your point. So, yes, there are examples of what they've done with Noah Gray, and even what they've done with Trey Smith. I know it's a different medical situation, but that took a level of investment that maybe some teams, that maybe some teams weren't willing to do, for the off chance that he may not be as productive, or we don't necessarily need a starter at that position. He may be a guy on the second, third line, and do we want to give obviously that amount of resource and attention to? Now, you could say, well, Nate, that's callous. Welcome to the NFL, kids.
Dude.
Some teams do not care.
No.
And if some NFL teams do not care, best believe some college teams don't care. Like, we need you Saturdays. We need you at, practice, film session, workouts. Everything else is up to you. And I kind of understand that.
Got a lot of guys.
A lot of guys. And these are young men trying to become adults. But also, he's a highly touted recruit and a really, really good football player. So if you can't make it somewhat easier on him in college, that to some degree is a reflection of your program. The Chiefs are obviously, they've talked to him at the combine, I believe. They've obviously seen him a number of times in person, both on campus and obviously scouting him at games. So he's obviously someone that they're very interested in. And I get the sense that that's not going to be a deterrent, Josh.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, the football fit, which obviously Seth thinks that he can reasonably fit the Chiefs offense very well. Now it's just a matter of how quickly do you think he can do that? What is this transition like going to be the first year? And hopefully, if Noah Gray's around, he can be a mini mentor for him to, be a nice first grader during positional meetings at 9 a.m. to where Connor, I know he's driving you nuts, but Connor, can we just get him to 11:30? Because then
we get him to lunch.
Because then we can get him to the cafeteria. He'll be right, and then he'll be ready to practice. And guess what? Kind of a new person, but you know what that's like. You've coached Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Kadarius Toney,
and they couldn't blame it on their pancreases.
Nope, couldn't.
Pancreas.
That's a great. That probably is correct, Seth. I talked a ton about.
If you're wondering, kids, Kadarius Toney has a personality that is both engaging and mysterious.
That makes sense.
And for Marquez Valdez-Scantling, depending on how he was playing, kind of told you where his mood was. So look, you go out there and coach receivers. You think Connor Embry has a good job? He doesn't. It's really, really hard.
Justice for Connor Embry is a great twist on this show today. We've talked about Adonai Mitchell a lot over weeks now, and even more on a very small part of it. But listen, if a frequently mocked to the Chiefs draft prospect, we all find out he has diabetes, it's in my contract. I get to do 10 minutes on it. Sorry, I put it in there. I was not surprised.
1,000,000%. And fit wise, he can play inside or outside. He's got enough speed to threaten down the field, but he also separates well, shallow and intermediate. On the field, I think it's a good fit. If you were to ask me whether I'd rather have him or Worthy, I actually don't know. But either one of them, I would be very happy with the Chiefs taking at 32.
I'm a little bit worried about Xavier Worthy in the middle of the field with a safety looking to potentially get suspended.
And that's, safety sitting there risk rewarding it. Like, oh, man, but he might actually vaporize. Is that worth 2 games? Perhaps. Like, I think we're going to see these guys in the playoffs again.
You guys remember when Randy Johnson threw that baseball? Hit that bird, his feathers. I could do that.
And then another guy did it. That's what it would be like. But I do with Worthy, and we can talk more about that as the draft gets closer. Although, holy cow, it's like almost here.
It's here, and we're gonna. I'll tell you what, Tucker. If you want to kick it to the next level down the slide here, we can come back to a couple things from Dame that I do think is worth talking about. But we're in this space now. Sorry, I'm hijacking to shift to say. The other thing we want to talk about today is what is the strategy in terms of receivers? We talked about this a week or two ago, and things have changed. Seth's looked at more tape. We've gotten some more mocks. The smoke has come and gone. Do you look at these guys when you say, hey, the very rare question you ask yourself that caught you off guard, Seth, of do I prefer Worthy or Mitchell? I actually don't know now that I've said it out loud. I think the answer to this question ends up being about how you feel about tier 2 and how many guys are in tier 2, but can you wait until 32 to get your pick of who's remaining at wide receiver? Or are you going to have to pay that premium to go up and, as we've written for here, shoot for the stars, Seth?
That's the question that they have to ask themselves is whether or not, like you said, tier 2. And the funny thing is you're already in tier 2, right? Because you've got the big 3 that everyone knows. And I'm someone if Rome, I'm not going to try with the last name because I haven't looked at his film at all or tried to learn
Rome from Washington, yes.
Rome from Washington, which by the way, again, that's why I'm worried about Michael, what's his name? Because now I've looked at Jalen Polk's film a little bit. That dude can play too. So this guy's throwing to multiple, like a first rounder and a second rounder. And it's and then McMillan, their third receiver, he looks really good too. And so I'm curious if pro teams are I wonder if this is like a Josh Dobbs situation.
Don't tell the Las Vegas Raiders this. They need a quarterback, Seth.
And no one could do it better than Bo Penix. So the big thing, it really is so we're already in tier 2. And then the question becomes, okay, do you have anyone that really stands out among that tier 2? How many people are in that tier 2 and how will it fall to you? And that's one thing that I found kind of interesting as I've gone through the draft so far is when I look at Lad McConkey, or I look at Adonai Mitchell, or I look at Xavier Worthy, or I look at Brian Thomas Jr., and even Troy Franklin, who's more controversial, not a one of them are someone that I would be upset with if the Chiefs took at 32. And so if the Chiefs feel the same way, now, are some of those guys going to bust? Yes. Do we know which ones? No, not really. So for me, knowing that there's that many guys that I would be comfortable with, then it's okay. Well, does any one of them stand out so much, Brian Thomas Jr., excuse me, that if they fall, do you become interested in trying to trade up if there's a team that's willing to trade up with the Chiefs anymore, which I feel like Brett Veach might get hung up on a few times.
It's
like,
it's an NFC. It's an NFC team. I don't think any AFC team is going to be taking the Chiefs' calls immediately.
No. Well, you imagine calling the Ravens or the Bills or the Bengals
or the Jags.
Who are you going to call?
Yeah, or the Jaguars. Yeah,
they have taken so many people out of contention. So the big thing for me,
you know who would answer the phone, Seth? Because I thought about this. It'd be the Miami Dolphins. I think the Miami Dolphins would answer the actual phone.
I think they would answer the phone.
And
you guys remember when the Raiders gave? Remember when the Raiders gave the Patriots Randy Moss? Why can't we do one of those?
Yeah, why? There's gotta be. So there's gotta. Yeah, the Raiders. I don't know where their head was at there, but they're the Raiders. They're weird, and you can't count on them to do with that with the Chiefs. It's a real bummer.
Right.
I would. So the interesting thing for me there is, you like the shoot for the stars. I like that idea. This idea of, is this a draft? And I was actually talking about this on Twitter earlier. Is this a draft where the Chiefs try to kind of grab a star? What they've done the last few drafts is they've hit, and I'm not talking about value now. I'm talking purely about in terms of stars versus good players versus great players at not as impactful positions or something like that, right? They've hit a bunch of singles and doubles other than Trent McDuffie, who's a star at an impact position. Other than that, they've drafted a bunch of good, solid players, or really, really good players like Creed Humphrey, one of the best centers in the league, but he plays center. And the difference between a good center and an elite center, it doesn't move the needle much. Even an average center to an elite center, it doesn't move the needle as much as it does with other positions. And I'm curious, with such a complete roster and such a clear hole, and you've got like this 1 year where it's like, maybe this would be a year it would be really great to reset, knowing that in a few years, maybe the team dynamic is going to look a little different when Travis Kelce decides to, pull an Arnold Schwarzenegger and become a movie star or whatever.
Once he finally admits that he hasn't loved football for 4 or 5 years and retires.
And so this would be an interesting one. That's why, to me, the only one whose film I've looked at from the entire group that I would be willing to if he fell to 20 or even not quite that far, would be Brian Thomas Jr. Now, obviously, if any of the big three fall to 12 or 13, I'd be you know what? Do something goofy. Just make everyone freak out. Malik Neighbors is a Chief? Yeah. What?
Hey, Seth, does that include Brock Bowers at 16 with the Seattle Seahawks on the clock?
I think for me it would. Just because the synergy is so good there. It's just tight ends are such a crapshoot, right? Just don't
also
know.
not as big of an advantage financially for hitting one.
Right, because you don't save as much money.
Right. They're not linebackers, but they're also not wide receivers.
To be fair, Dane Brugler has Brock Bowers going 10 to the Jets. The Jets, though, should probably find someone to block for 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. So there's multiple ways you can look at this where why
would they need to do that when the Secret Service is going to be protecting him this time next year? That's weird.
Yeah, there's
a quarterback you can't see in pure pitch black darkness.
I mean, the teens look to be in the range of we need linemen. Once Joe Alt's off the board, we assume.
Do you think Aaron Rodgers thinks that every penalty against his team is a false flag?
the Indianapolis Colts are there at 15.
Keep going, Nate.
I don't think they're going to pick up the phone. So if somehow Brock Bowers falls to 14 or 16, the Saints are at 14, the Seahawks are at 16, you could potentially make the call and say, hey, let's see what this 2 tight end set is really going to look like. For maybe the next 2 years, if you want to bring Brock Bowers into the mix. But I think there's a real legitimate chance that either Brock Bowers or Brian Thomas Jr. could be available in that 14, 15, 16 range, just because there are so many good offensive linemen. And once we just saw what happened in the free agency market with defensive linemen, that may be where the draft sort of starts to shake early on in the first round, once we get through like the top 9. But it's just something to consider. So if one of those two guys is available, which could happen at 14, 15, or 16, I do think you start percolating the phone calls.
I think the answer to the question is in the question itself, and I'll tell you what I mean after the break.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
We should have taken a break like 5 or 10 minutes ago, and I didn't have time to try to do a little rope-a-dope there, so I just went for an old-fashioned tease. I've been thinking about this since we were texting about it earlier, and I didn't have an answer in mind then. And I think I have at least where my inclination is now to the answer of, should you shoot for the stars? I think the fact that we're admitting that there are 3 receivers, and I'm cool with making Brock Bowers in that group of 4, that are actually the stars, and then tier 2 is actually disagreed upon. I would be really surprised if Brian Thomas Jr. went top 12 or 15, but I'd be really, really surprised if any of those top 3 receivers didn't go top 10 or 12. So I have a hard time talking myself into a relatively sizable trade up. If it's a couple of spots and it's using picks that you may be able to replicate by a trade back later, I'm not a never trade up absolutist, but I'm certainly inclined that way. If you're not getting one of the actual stars of the class,
right,
you're shooting for less than the stars. You're shooting for your favorite of the next options, and I don't know if that's worth the premium if you might get 3 or 4 options at 32. The other thing, though, that I have to put a pin in from my own perspectives is if you've got a 3-man tier 1 and a 3-man tier 2, that doesn't mean the Chiefs have 6 guys they would be happy to take at 32, either by fit schematically or fit team character, culturally, whatever. I have to remember that because I think I could get to 6 or 7 receivers where I'd say, hey, I get to sit at 32 and all but guarantee that one of those guys will be there. I'm good with it. But as we just talked about, I have no idea if the Chiefs actually want Adonai Mitchell. I have no idea how many of these guys fit that profile. So in a world where one of the big 3 receivers or Bowers fell to 18 to 22, I'd be like, all right, this makes a lot of sense. I don't think either of those guys are going to be there. So now you're trading up to get to the front of the next line, yes. And that feels a lot less valuable to me.
And this is, I think, what we are learning from Dane's 7-round mock draft is I thought there'd be a lot more receivers in the first round. There are only 5. And part of that is because of what Josh just said. Do I want to just be the first person to take from the next group, or do I think I'll find more value in the second round? And guess what, kids? There's a lot more receivers being taken in the second and the third round because of the surplus, not the other way around. Now, here's what's fascinating. By you shooting for the stars, you are guaranteeing that somebody in that draft room, and I'm being dead serious, someone in that draft room, if you shoot for the stars, needs to get on the phone and call Donovan Smith immediately.
Yeah.
Iron out some sort of agreement in principle that you will smooth and dot all the I's and cross all the T's after the draft. But you cannot do one without the other, or without acknowledging the other, I should say, maybe. So, okay, we have a full competition with Wanye Morris and Donovan Smith. Donovan Smith has the inside advantage because he is the veteran. He was obviously the one playing in the postseason. Shooting for the stars also does something else interestingly, too, because this is terrifying if you're a Chiefs fan. Josh, do you know where Mr. Brian Thomas Jr. goes in Dane's mock draft?
I went through it, but I don't.
This might be another reason why you would be inclined to trade up, because
Is it-
somehow the
Is it Orchard Park?
But Buffalo 28 makes sense. Yeah.
Because somehow the Buffalo Bills and the Jacksonville Jaguars have conspired against you, giving the Bills the chance to move up.
Oh, he made the Bills move up for him. Interesting. Okay.
The Bills move up to 17 to take Brian Thomas Jr. Quote, the Bills need their draft picks to remodel their roster with young, low-price depth, but general manager Brandon Beane is an aggressive drafter and has never shied away from moving up in the first round to get his guy. Thomas is an outstanding size speed athlete with better route running skills than he's given credit for, and he'll give Josh Allen a new wide receiver 1 on the offense. So, one of the reasons why I asked 14, 15, 16 is because who knows? Maybe the Buffalo Bills trade up. Maybe the Cincinnati Bengals trade up. Maybe you have to go to such a length to be available for that spot, which means you might have to give up more draft capital, which is the push-pull of it all.
It's just it's getting expensive. I don't know what how you get to 12 or 15 or whatever you need to get to. I don't know what that would cost.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the projected trade that Dane does for the Bills to get Brian Thomas Jr. The Bills trade 28, 133, 144, and this is where it hurts me.
Future something, right?
A 2025 future second rounder to the Jaguars for 17. You're giving a second round pick.
Yeah.
That dude better be a wide receiver 1, kids. Now look, I don't know if you have to trade a future second round pick to move up that much. It makes some sense. The Chiefs will not do that trade, kids. The Chiefs will either use their third round pick or the third round pick that they own that was previously owned by the Tennessee Titans as a result of the L'Jarius Sneed trade. So one thing you could do is your 32, the Tennessee Titans third round pick, and either a 5th round pick this year or a couple future round picks that are low in next year's draft, whether that's 5th, 6th. But the Chiefs would probably like to have 7 to 8 picks in this draft for obvious reasons. But if you got to move up, you may have to do a future third. And so you have at least 2 of those at your disposal. Now, if you want to get real, feisty, Josh, it's this year's first 32 and both 3rd round picks next year.
And even then, I mean, when you're talking about future thirds, for me, the question is less, is that worth it? And it's more, what does that buy you? Because anything more expensive than that is what it's going to take to get to one of those top 4 pass catchers that we're talking about. And so I think that's not feasible. So with that kind of putting a bow on it, Seth, I guess here's kind of my last thought at that point. I think that's when you stay disciplined. When you say, hey, this price keeps going up and the players aren't changing, I think at that point, unless you have big 3, Brian Thomas Jr., teardrop, everybody else, falling in love like that in a draft that is so rich at the position, you talk about your NFL Twitter freaking out theory, where if the Chiefs make a move and the rest of the league freaks out, it's a fun, good move. If they move up for Brian Thomas Jr., people will freak out. If they draft Xavier Worthy at 32, people are going to freak out. If it's Adonai Mitchell at 32, they're going to freak out. That to me is more about the Chiefs than any of these players or what these moves might actually be. If they add a dynamic, athletic pass catcher, the NFL world is going to flip. I really have my hesitations about making that big of a swing for a guy that you're admitting is in tier 2 or tier 3.
Right. I would say the only reason I would say any type of exception, and this is very specific to Brian Thomas Jr., and I don't think anyone else, because I would put him above the other guys that I've watched. Like Xavier Worthy's film, it's about as good. The problem is he weighs as much as my 15-year-old. So, and hey, all due respect to him, he might be awesome. Tank Dell was awesome last year.
Can Xavier Worthy be Ted Ginn Jr.? Where I see the ball, catch the ball. Where the hell is the sideline?
And that's a smart way to look. Tyler Lockett has never taken a hit in his NFL career. Now I have to double check that stat, but he catches the ball, he's like, nope. And you know what? That's why Tyler Lockett has had an unbelievable career as an extremely undersized guy who plays as a deep threat. So there's a path there too, but because that creates a question, Thomas doesn't have that question, so that's why I'd put him in a tier above, right? So that's where, to me, I almost wonder, because the tier 1 is such a unique draft class in theory this year. In almost any other draft class, Neighbors, Rome, or Marvin Harrison Jr., any of those three would be the undisputed number 1 guy, and everyone else is second. Whereas all three of these guys, these are all like, any one of these guys could be a top 5 pick. So like Brian Thomas Jr., I watched the film of the receivers in last year's draft. He would have been the undisputed number 1 guy last year. So that's part of it. So you want to make sure that you don't base it just on that. Like, where does he stack up and compared to the rest of that tier 2? And then but I agree with you though. The cost, I love the way you said that. Seriously, the cost is changing while the players stay the same. You've got to keep that in mind because it's really easy as the moment gets closer and closer. I think the big thing for them, let's say, like let's say going up to like 19 to the Los Angeles Rams, they're going to have to pay a hefty price for that. Now, on the other hand,
I don't think the Rams are trading out of that because they haven't had a first-round pick since we've been doing this podcast.
That's a solid point.
That's such a good point.
Also, that would be hilarious, but they'd still get the 32. They'd still pick. And so, but like, really, there's a run of NFC teams here. I have a general rule against trading with Howie Roseman. But the funniest thing ever, depending on who falls to 27, would be like, once you get to about 24, that's where my comfort zone is, trading up, maybe a little higher than that for Brian Thomas Jr. The funniest thing ever would be, let's say Brian Thomas Jr. and Bowers are gone, which they certainly would be by 27. It'd be shocking if they weren't. Although all it takes, just for the record, if only 5 receivers go in the first round or maybe even 6, all it takes is some team to fall in love with A.D. Mitchell's upside, Xavier Worthy's speed, and Ladd McConkey's route running, and suddenly you're at 27 and Brian Thomas is sitting right there, and you have an opportunity to do the funniest thing and trade in front of the Bills and grab and their war room to freak out again. That would be incredible. So I think it just depends on how it all falls too, and how big a gap you think there is between these first round guys. Like for me, I don't know. I have a really hard time layering these guys into tiers because I feel so differently about Troy Franklin and Brian Thomas Jr. I can't really call them both tier 2 guys because there's such a gap there. So, but I understand what you're saying because I want this to be the year that they add star power. The problem is they haven't really had to for years because they've had the big 3, their own big 3. They've had Mahomes, Kelce, Jones, and you can fill in a team around those 3 guys because they are generational. It would be nice though. It would be a very cool thing to see a guy. There's such a great fit there with Thomas in particular, and honestly, even Worthy in terms of what they do on film, and Mitchell. And that's you know what? So it's making the point for me. You're right. Yes, you're absolutely right.
It's that there's and it's not that the Chiefs love all of these guys so much that any of them at 32 would be reasonable. That's not where I'm coming from. But if there are 3 of those guys who are not the big 3, you'd say I'd be happy with him at 32. All you gotta hope is that not all 6 of them go in front of you, make it 7 and include Brock Bowers in there. Like that waiting game would be stressful. But if you say, man, we in here, we love Brian Thomas. We see the plan for Worthy. We see the plan for A.D. Mitchell. These 3 guys would all do so much damage in this offense. And if 2 of them if one of them ticks off the board, maybe you need to know about it. If Ladd McConkey is on that list, which I imagine he is, you extend that list by another name. I wonder if that list is actually not 6 or 7 for the Chiefs. I wonder if it's 4. That's my concern.
If all 7 are gone, that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, that's great.
Fine. That's
Get
fine.
the second best tackle in the draft or whatever.
Or because of the complexion of his skin, he done fell to us. Come on home, Cooper.
If Cooper's there at 32, I roll my eyes every time.
Cooper.
I hope I'm not offending anybody.
Look at my glasses, Cooper. If you there at 32, we calling, okay? I need a versatile defensive back, cornerback, who can catch and run with the ball and punt return, because we really need Kadarius Toney to just focus on some routes. Focus on routes, lining up, catching the football.
Cooper, you ever run routes, Cooper?
Hey, Cooper,
you ever running routes?
You ever run a screen? You ever run a screen, Coop? We can put you at punt return. I'm
Coop,
dead.
You see these kickoff rules?
I'm dead serious. Now, honestly, you would probably go, hey Donovan, we gotta look. The board fell a certain way. We gotta take this tackle at 32. Or because of the color of his complexion, we're going to beat the market by getting Cooper DeJean.
I have, I'm going to say politely, rolled my eyes at every mock that has the Chiefs taking a corner in the first round because I just think it's L'Jarius Sneed reactionary. And they moved up for McDuffie.
Obviously.
I'm not saying they wouldn't do that for a corner ever, but it's like that's not where the value pocket ends up falling.
And there
If
ain't
Cooper's
no
there at
McDuffie in
32.
this draft.
But there's a Cooper. But there is a Cooper. If Cooper's there at 32, I'll take it. Seth, where does Xavier Legette fall in for you in the wide receiver discussion? You have the latest edition of the Know Your Draft Crush series up in the Chief of the North newsletter, mnchiefsfan.substack.com. And you took a look at the, I don't even know if hopefully it's not the right word because I can't say it. What happened here, guys? This is a live. When you are an enigma, you are enigmatic. There we go. I got there eventually.
Yes.
Enigmatic.
Golly. So I don't even know if that's the right word. Hopefully not, because I can't say it again. But comparing him to DK Metcalf with a really, 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 really late blooming for Xavier Legette, he was a fascinating prospect before the clip started rolling, and then you can see jump off the GIFs what it is that he does well, literally jumping out of the GIFs. What did you see, Seth?
The first thing that you see with him is his top speed is terrifying. Like that guy can scoot, and it's a genuinely impressive thing. I'm curious, like, if him and Xavier Worthy had like some way for them to like meet up once they're both running top speed. I have no idea, because his top speed is legitimately terrifying. He's not as explosive as DK Metcalf though. He's got a good first step. He explodes out of that to an extent, but he doesn't accelerate well. It's so funny when you're trying to figure out, like, with receivers, because you really have so many different aspects. The first step, and then you've got like the the second through fifth steps, the acceleration part, and then you've got the long speed. And because Marquez Valdes-Scantling has unbelievable top speed. He can really run, but he's not explosive in the first step or the second, third, or fourth step. And then once he gets like that fifth or sixth step, you're like, whoa, because he's got really long legs. Legette is incredibly fast when he gets going, but he's not quick. Now, that wasn't a problem for DK Metcalf. The thing is, DK Metcalf, beyond just having an explosive first step, also had an explosive second and third step, so he's able to accelerate in and out of certain routes in a certain way. Xavier Legette, from what I can see, and he's an older prospect, so yeah, well, if he becomes an elite route runner, yes, any single one of these guys we're talking about, if they become an elite route runner, will be a very, very good NFL wide receiver. That's like a given. Any of these
freakish athletes, I'll tell you what, if Louis Rees-Zammit becomes an elite NFL route runner, I'm buying.
Yes, that's just how this works. So you can't count on that, because you know who becomes an elite route runner? Like 6 guys. Yep. Like, this is not, it's just hard to do. Here's what he can do, though. He can line up on the boundary and threaten deep, and if you do not respect that, it doesn't matter if you're some lesser competition or if you're Georgia. If you do not respect him over the top, he will run right by your dude. And even if your guy tries to catch up and the ball is underthrown by 10 yards, he will go up and get that thing. So he's a legitimate deep threat. And he's one of those guys that really fits the whole lineup on the boundary. He's an X. You can have him replace Marquez Valdes-Scantling tomorrow, I think, and probably be more productive. You never know, right? You just don't. But he's got just as much speed, probably a little more. And he's more explosive after the catch. He can run some comebacks and curls. He's got a good start-stop. But if you're asking this guy to, run a whip route, that's not going to happen. Well, it'll happen. It'll just happen like
slow motion.
Is it Juju Smith-Schuster boxing somebody out? Yes.
Yeah, and that's where he doesn't have a lot of finesse. He's not a guy who really wins much shallow. Intermediate, he can win a little bit with some. He's got good stop-start for a big dude.
Right.
He can put on the brakes pretty quickly, and when you combine that with his ability to accelerate down the field, that's formative for a guy who can win. The one issue here is Andy Reid. even tried with MVS to make him a more do-everything receiver because that's Andy Reid. And once they just started using MVS as, dude, this is a track meet now. Okay, you're our X. You're lining up at the boundary. We are going to give you 3 or 4 targets a game and do what you shall with them. You know what? Once they started doing that with him, I watched the playoffs. It worked.
Pretty good. He blacked
so-
out.
Yeah. And so the big thing there, though, is that's not a guy I think that you can take in the first round. Because I've had people ask me about that.
You know what that is, though, Seth?
It's a guy you can take in the second round.
That's a sneaky trade up in the second round.
Oh.
And remind me, Seth, does he play below the Mason-Dixie line? Because a trend could be starting on
Where
the
is
other
South
side of the ball.
Carolina?
On the other side of the ball, kids. I'm just saying, they effing adored Kadarius Toney. And where did he play, kids? Florida. Last
almost as south as you can get.
Last year, they saw Rashee Rice and said, I know, Clark. I know. Clark, you ain't got to say nothing, baby.
Don't talk to anybody about him,
Don't
Clark.
say nothing, Clark. We already done flied him in. Where does he play? He played at Southern Methodist University. That's below the Mason-Dixie line. Now we talking about South Carolina.
Is that all we should be doing? Should we just be crossing off the guys that played north of the line? Hold on, I'm opening up the draft
You just
guide
got to
again.
be unbelievable. Like
You
you
just gotta
go to
be
Washington, you got to be
unbelievable.
like Trent McDuffie's college film is just lights out, man.
And
If
look,
he were,
kids,
if his arms were longer, he would have been drafted like top 8.
if and 2 inches taller too. Remember, Jalen. I know you can say, whoa. Didn't Jalen Watson play at Washington State? Yes, but where is he from? He's from Georgia. Okay, Georgia. He had to go get it out the mud in Wazoo. Okay, it's a little bit different, but he's from Georgia. So I'm just saying, these things are starting to match up now. It ain't just DB land. It's also, it might be percolating because look, I mean, I may be breaking the mold here, but we're at draft week already. Brian Thomas Jr., where he play? Adonai Mitchell, where he play?
Yeah. I'm looking
Xavier
at the KCSN
Worthy,
draft guide right
where
here.
he play?
Nate, until you get to the Washington guys and Troy Franklin,
Where he play?
there's not a whole lot of lines scratching. Most of these are underlines, not strike throughs.
Correct. So I'm just saying, I think Legette is someone I'd be willing to trade up to like 50.
And here's something interesting I see a few comments asking about, so he's basically MVS. No, because he has significantly better ball skills. He's
And
a
that
go
vert,
up and
though. That vert
Yep,
set.
he's got that vertical, and not just the vertical, but he times it well. He adjusts to it. There are multiple, and the gifs are there in the article where he made his quarterback look way more accurate than the throw was. And this is something Brian Thomas Jr. does that I absolutely love. Xavier Worthy does it, and I love it. Adonai Mitchell does it, and I love it. True deep threats, to be a great deep threat, you need to be able to track the ball well, adjust to it, run underneath it without slowing down. We've talked about this probably every show, like the last 3 shows. And Legette can do that down the field. He can adjust to it, and he can win the battle for it. And that's why, in theory, he could be a significantly higher level version of what MVS brought to the offense. That's why I referenced DK Metcalf in terms of like a legitimate, really high level deep threat. That is worth a lot more than an adequate deep threat. Those are 2 very different things. And one thing to like about Legette, there'd be an easy role right there for the offense, and it would allow Hollywood Brown to kind of do his thing at the intermediate level as much as the deeper levels to where he's not pigeonholed into something. So that's, that's there's a lot to like about Legette. There's just enough question marks there that the first round thing is tough. But I don't know about trading up in the second round. There's a lot of really good. Like I'm watching Jalen Polk right now, and I'm like, man, he's good too. Yeah. Like there's a lot of really good wide receivers in this draft.
When it comes to receivers and Brett Veach, it is the quintessential go get your guy. And look, I even know that Go KC Forever has mentioned that was McCole. Yes, McCole Hartman, where he played. He played at Georgia.
Right?
Did they trade up? You damn right they did. So look, was he refined? No.
Well, he also never showed
Is
the
he
kind
now?
of
No.
He never showed the kind of tracking skills over his shoulder that Legette has shown on
Josh,
film
why
or
you do
contested
that?
catch skills.
I just no one listen. This guy's got plenty of love from McCole Hardman. I would not say that at any point he refined, which is kind of like that. Let that be a little bit of a warning of this. Of when you're talking about the projections of like where are those guys going to end up being 3, 4, 5 years down the line. The way that you talked and wrote about Legette is so good for me, Seth, and so frustrating because the idea of like, all right, maybe MVS plus day one, that's exciting. Are the Chiefs going to be excited about having a guy who does one thing really well? I don't think so. I don't mean one thing like run a straight. I don't mean run a 9. I mean play one wide receiver position.
Yeah.
When freaking every receiver who's come into that building for the last 5 or 6 years, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm doing something either completely new or I'm doing everything everywhere all at once, and I'm learning all of this. And I don't know. I mean, we talked about this plenty last year with Rashee Rice and the year before with Sky Moore. Like, is that making the development process for these young guys harder? Is that worth it? Those are two different questions.
Andy Reid will
definitely
say yes.
harder. Andy Reid would definitely say it's worth it.
Yes, he would. Yes.
I would not want to disagree with Andy Reid on wide receiver development, but they had to cut down what they were going to ask Rashee Rice to do a little bit last year to get him more involved more quickly. So if you said, hey, 2024 offense, you want to drop Legette in there, I'd be pretty excited about that. I don't know if the Chiefs would be that excited about that. And that has made me, I am completely lost in terms of what I actually expect the Chiefs to do at receiver, because I have gotten my hopes up and I have been gaslit and I have seen them get it right and I've seen them get it wrong. And I don't know anymore other than probably somebody fast and versatile. And Legette might just be one of those two things.
Hey, Tucker, for a few minutes. Hey, for a few minutes, Tucker, put off-season lessons in highlight.
Well, I don't know that you can call for that. It's not my lesson.
It's off-season lesson. Hey.
I also don't know that Tucker made the highlight for that one.
Tucker,
so you may just have to spiritually
do it, Tucker.
I don't know that Tucker can. You guys broke my and Tucker's spirit so completely that we both gave up on. They're just baked in. It's just baked in there. What's your lesson, Nate? I'm sorry Tucker didn't make it.
Here's another off-season lesson, kid. Was Sky Moore involved in a trade? You damn right he was. Did they trade up for McCole Hardman? You damn right they did. Did they trade up for Rashee Rice last year? You know it. Kids, when it comes to receivers and the Kansas City Chiefs under this current administration,
they get it right 33% of the time.
They go up and they get their guy. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they're trending up. No, Hardman's been better than Sky. Never mind.
Yeah. There's no correlation. It's the dots are just moving. It's nothing.
just want to, that's why
sometimes you guys make me feel better about how things are going to go. And then some days like today, Nate specifically makes me feel worse.
If Xavier Worthy's your guy, go get him, baby. If it's Legette, go get him. Go get him.
If you'd bought 3 cars in the last 3 years and 2 of them didn't work when you got back to your house with them, I don't know that Holly would be like, Nate, go get your 4th car. Your last one was good. Go get you another one. As opposed to maybe wait for the deal to show up on Facebook Marketplace.
No, we got to trade up in the 5th round to get Cornell Powell because we got to get our guy. Come on. I mean, come on.
He has traded up a lot for receivers.
Yes, Seth.
That's
what he does. He wanted to trade up last year for Xavier.
which makes me feel better about their process.
Their philosophy has remained true. Whether
their
you
philosophy
agree with
remained true
or not.
Maybe their scouting of receivers has gotten better though, because if the guy they wanted to get was Zay Flowers, that was the right guy to go get, and that was true with his college film, and it's proven true as a pro. Unless you talk about like Puka, but like no one knew. Come on, quit pretending. I mean, they should have traded up and drafted Puka. Well, they could have just drafted him.
They should have stayed where they were and drafted Puka. Yeah, I mean they should.
Can you imagine? Oh, they would have gotten killed on draft night for that. Like if people had been like, who? Like it would have been just so. I will say it makes me feel a little better knowing that they wanted to trade up for Flowers and then they trade up for Rice, and both of them have been good pros with, some other stuff that's happened. But that makes me feel a little better about their process, at least. Maybe figuring out who might be worth trading up for. Maybe it's a coincidence. Do you feel better, Josh?
No.
Is that because you haven't had enough sugar today?
Let me see. I'm at 180. I'm a little high right now, but that's not enough to really make me cranky.
Well, that's never stopped Nate from doing the show. So
let's mercifully let that be the end. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time to get to my off-season lessons. We did a little preview of what we expect to hear from Brett Veach. Housekeeping notes here. So we'll hear from Veach tomorrow, and you can read Nate's work on that on theathletic.com. You said Polk is next, right, Seth, in the newsletter?
Yes. Hopefully that'll be up tomorrow.
And then there will be more to come before the next episode of this, I presume, because we'll be back on Tuesday. And then Tuesday's show will be our last show before the draft, because Thursday is draft day. So no show from us here. Then, of course, please note that KCSN is going to be absolutely fire hosing Chiefs draft content directly your way all throughout the draft. And we're going to have a great time on Sunday up at Holiday Distillery. Make sure you check out KCSN socials to RSVP for that. I have now RSVP'd for that. So I will be there along with, it's a really long commute for Seth and a decent one for Nate. So we'll see where everybody ends up. Seth will not. Seth, it's closer to you than my house is. It's in the right direction, I guess, to get to you, more or less.
I will not be. I will not be.
Reasonable. I'll tell you what, if somebody comes and says, hey, call Seth and put him on speakerphone, I'll try. I can't promise he'll pick up. We'll all find out together if Seth will answer my cold calls or not. We can try to patch him in, but I'll be there on Sunday, and that'll be an awesome time. In addition to all the great coverage that's going to be going all throughout the 3-day draft coverage. But we'll be back on Tuesday to do our final pre-draft show, and then we'll be back the next Tuesday to talk about a lot of new members of the Kansas City Chiefs and whatever our state and of our emotions may be. But we can certainly guarantee it'll be enigmatic. Redeem myself. Now, Seth, who's the quarterback of the Washington Huskies?
I want to say Girth Brooks.
That's exactly right. Nate, get us out of here.
I know this is another off-season lesson. See, we're coming around now, ladies and gentlemen. I have two things. The first is for Go KC Forever, who says we'll be waiting all night. I'm assuming Thursday, first round, for a trade out. I don't think that's gonna happen, kids.
I'd be cool with it,
because in the Clark Hunt, Brett Veach era, they have never traded out of the first round if they have a first-round pick at their disposal at the night of the draft. Clark Hunt really values first-round picks. He has said that publicly. His actions have made that to be true. So even with the trophy in his hands last year, we making a pick, okay? So I don't foresee a trade out of round one just because Clark Hunt values first-round picks. And Brett Veach is go get your guy to some extent, which does not lend oneself to a trade out in the first round. So that's another lesson for you to take. This is my crusade now. This is part 2. This is my crusade. I'm counting on one man to do right by this young fella who played football in Iowa, who went through the gutter, okay, the absolute gutter of non-offensive football.
Right.
He was carrying all them boys on his back. And they put him at DB, at outside corner at Iowa. He held it down. He got y'all 10 wins when y'all didn't deserve 10 wins last year. He got it out of the gutter. And I'm counting on one man to do right by this young man. We do not look at the color of his skin. We do not look at the 2 letters next to his name. At pick 20, I swear to God, please, Lord, please let Mike Tomlin pick up the phone and call Cooper DeJean. Somebody get this to Pittsburgh, because it's my crusade now. Not only can we get this man in the first round.
Is it Cooper DePeen?